Good morning. My name is Jane Scarf, and I'm coming to you from Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I have really good news. In Ontario, the police services, 42 out of 44 police services, have publicly announced that they will not enforce the stay-at-home orders, which means they will not stop you randomly on the street, demand your ID, and demand where you're going, or in your car. They will not stop your car and demand your ID and demand to know where you're going, because these would be a violation of our fundamental rights that are found in the Canadian Bill of Rights. They're also in the Charter, but there's problems with the Charter. But the Bill of Rights very clearly delineates this: life, liberty, and security of person, liberty. And also it protects you from arbitrary treatment by the state, and which that would be. You haven't done anything wrong, you're just walking up the street, and they cannot limit your movement like that. It's totally in violation of this. And it's also in violation of the Criminal Code of Canada, because the Criminal Code of Canada specifies when and how you can be ID'd, for example, or and the other issue is with shutting gatherings. They haven't made this public announcement that they're not going to shut down the gatherings, but they have not been doing it in Ontario. And they didn't enforce the stay-at-home order the first time. Like in the second lockdown, we had also stay-at-home orders. Police didn't do it then either. So that's really good. Now, mind you, there is a problem because the OPP say they are going to do it. But I think we can get on their case and say like 42 out of 44 police services won't do it. Obviously, because it's a violation of the law. So what the hell's the OPP think they're doing? And you can make a complaint. Just a second, get the name of it. You can pick up one of these, complaint. It's with the Office of the Independent Police Review Director, or you can do it online at OIPRD complaints at ontario.ca. So you can complain about the policy of the OPP. It doesn't have to be a specific complaint. Like, you don't have to wait until you get stopped to complain. You can complain now because they've made a public statement that they're going to do this. So as many people as possible make that complaint would assist. And you can use the argument that it's a violation of our rights to do that. In Section 1 and 2 of the Canadian Bill of Rights. It's also in Section 7 of the Charter, but the Charter is a problem because Section 1 of the Charter allows them to have a good enough reason, and they're claiming they have a good enough reason. And the problem with that is they can enforce what they've passed in orders, in regulations, or laws that violate your rights until the court decides if they had a good enough reason or not. But like, let's use the Canadian Bill of Rights, because no such determination by the court needs to be made. Your rights are immediate, and they're immediately enforceable. And Section 2 clearly states they're not allowed to override them. So that's a good news for the day. And also of concern related to all of this is in Alberta, they shut down a church there, the church of Pastor James Coates, and they had him in jail for several months. And when he went to his bail hearing, they made the argument, well, he has a right to religious expression. And the court said, well, they can't deal with the COVID measures, so they kept him in jail. So that's a demonstration of what I'm talking about. That's wrong with the Charter. They just used the Charter and they kept him in jail. So let's not use the Charter. And currently they're saying that he's got a court case coming up in May with the provincial offenses court, where he's got a ticket under the emergency measures. I don't know what their act is called there, but it's comparable to what we have here. And now the court is saying that they can't hear, or they won't hear, the constitutional challenge. So I'm assuming they're saying that they're not a court of competent jurisdiction, because otherwise you're allowed to have a full defense. So you're allowed to have a constitutional defense. So to resolve that, the Justice Center, the Edmonton Justice Center, could bring his challenge to the higher court and ask the lower court to wait, waive the 11B, like speedy trial, waive that, and say, we got to wait until the higher court deals with the constitutionality of the laws that they're enforcing on him. But instead they're going, well, what are you going to do? Like the court said that they won't hear the arguments about the medical arguments about the pandemic not being, sufficient reason to, the so-called pandemic not being a good enough reason to override our rights. But the other thing is, they don't have to use the charter at all. They can use the Bill of Rights. They have 2 Bill of Rights they can use. Very privileged province, because they have the Alberta Bill of Rights, which just allows the government to override your rights, clearly. And they have the Canadian Bill of Rights, which means also that they cannot override your rights. So you have a right to religious freedom. So they have what my friend Kim Rydell calls a 2-punch lockdown knockout. And they could bring both these legislations into the POA court and say, this he's not guilty because this law is invalid, and application of it is invalid because there's no act of either provincial parliament in the case of Alberta, or federal parliament for the police to have been involved in it. So it's a very, very strong legal position they can take, and why they're not doing it, I have no idea. But people should be aware that there is remedy. There's 2 remedies that I'm aware of, and if the reason why the court won't hear it is because they're saying that they're not a high enough court, they're not a court of competent jurisdiction, then there's a remedy. You just bring the issue to the higher court and ask the lower court to wait, and then once you get your decision, then go. Or they could use the Bill of Rights, and that would be my preference, is to use the Bill of Rights. So I'm going to I have 3 letters from police that talk about the emergency measures in Ontario. And I asked them, I sent a letter asking them, and I'll put a link to the letter in the credits also. I asked the police what the responsibilities are in terms of enforcing the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act and the Reopening of Ontario Act in Ontario. And specifically, I brought up the Canadian Bill of Rights and their obligations there. And I asked them if they're going to shut the gatherings in contradiction to the Canadian Bill of Rights. What authority would they have to do that? And I got 3 responses. One from the RCMP, and they say, well, we're not going to answer those questions because all of this is none of their business. It's not in their mandate to be enforcing the Emergency Management and Reopening Act. So then I got one from the OPP, not a good one. They said that they will be shutting gatherings, and they will be regarding the Charter of Rights and Freedoms and the Human Rights Code. And they completely ignored the Canadian Bill of Rights. And I didn't even ask them about the Charter, and I didn't ask them about the Bill of Rights. I only asked them about the Ontario Human Rights. I didn't ask them about that. I only asked them about the Canadian Bill of Rights. So their answer is very coy, because they're saying, they're going to do this and they will be in compliance with the Charter. But that's because of Section 1. They will be in in compliance with the charter because of Section 1, which gives the government the right to override. And in fact, if we only had the charter, it would also obligate the police to override our rights, because they don't have the pay grade to decide if the government had a good enough reason or not. That has to be done by the court. So if we only had the charter, we'd be in big, deep doo-doo. And that's changing. People are becoming aware and starting to assert it. They're putting a no trespass notice on their home and on their churches and on their businesses. No entry by police without a criminal warrant, and no entry to bylaw, and no entry to public health, period. And it's working. The police are not, they're giving fines out still, but not smashing in. And those fines are challengeable because there are constitutional issues with those tickets, not charter, but constitutional issues that are really strong and have a good chance of success. And as well, the Canadian Bill of Rights. So if they're using it to, for example, shut down your protest, or shut down your church, or even busting in your home, there's cause to show that these are violations of the Canadian Bill of Rights. So that's good news. So I will put, oh yes, and I got one more response, and it was a good response, and it was from the Brantford Regional Police, and they say, thank you for your interest in the Brantford Police Services. Our officers exercise their authority according to federal, provincial, and local laws. And those emergency measures aren't any of these. I only asked about the emergency measures and the Canadian Bill of Rights. So their answer says, according to federal. Okay, so this is federal. The Canadian Bill of Rights is federal, provincial, and local laws. So this emergency stuff are not laws. They're bylaws, they're regulations. They're the lowest level. So the laws of this land trump the bylaw, and they're saying they're going to obey the laws. So I was really pleased with that. And they also said, if you have a complaint about the conduct of a police officer, a policy of the Brantford Police Services, or the service you have received, you may file a complaint with the Office of the Independent Police Review Director, OIPRD. Now, that's good, because you don't have to actually have had an incident with the OPP. Like, I'm not saying to go to complain about Bradford, but with the OPP, in that public statement that they will be shutting down. Read from their letter also. They say, okay, police use their discretion and undertake a gradual approach to enforcement of the emergency orders. The approach considers the severity of the specific situation and the government's public health intent to contain the spread of COVID-19. Individuals are asked to voluntarily comply with these prohibitions in an effort to curb the spread. Actually, but they did say they were shutting down gatherings. Where is it? The OPP is supporting efforts to limit transmission of COVID-19, including the government regulations under the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act and the Reopening of Ontario Act. All police in Ontario have the authority to shut down any gatherings that do not comply with capacity requirements and any other restrictions, and to clear the premises where these are held. So that tells it all right there. OPP are captured by the communists, and we don't have to accept that. That's our police, and we own those police. So we can demand that they cease and desist in violation of or violating citizens' rights. So they've publicly now stated two things. One, they're going to stop you, ask you for ID, and demand to know where you're going. Violation of our rights. And now, or they also had given this letter stating that they're going to shut your gatherings. So that's in your home too. So your home, your business, or your church, they're going to shut it down if it has too many people. So Christmas dinner, you have 7 people instead of 5. Police bust in the door and drag everybody out of the house and shut your house down. That is not legal. So we need to stand up and shout loudly about it. And we have the support of 42 out of 44 police services across Ontario agreeing with our position that these are not enforceable bylaws, not enforceable by police. Tickets, fine, we'll deal with the tickets, but they can't use it to impede. So if they come in the house, you have 7 not in the house to the door or to put it in your mailbox or whatever. Like if you have the trespass notice, they're not allowed to come in. They're not even allowed to walk on your walkway if you have a sign right at the road. But whatever, somehow they can, like when you go to leave home, they can hand you the ticket or mail it to you or whatever. I know a couple of cases where they've mailed these tickets. That's fine. You can fight the tickets, but the tickets isn't going to disturb your dinner. Or, I mean, it might make people think, I can't afford the ticket or whatever, but I don't think they have a chance. If you defend properly in court, I think there's all kinds of grounds to get the ticket thrown out. So tickets are a small issue. But in Alberta, they have the 2-punch there. So the tickets you don't even have to jump through hoops. The tickets are not even legal. So that's my message for the day, and I'm glad it's a happy message, and let's keep this work up and go out, open your business. My granddaughter contacted me this morning, and she said she went to the beach on the weekend, and there was tons of people. And of course, I was happy about that, and she was happy to give me this news. And I see people everywhere, all over the parks, all over the streets, all over the roads. We're not accepting this third round. People are not believing that they're putting their life at risk and going to kill nanny because they take their kids to the park. Like, come on! Like, the stats are not supporting their so-called, deadly virus, which is really just the flu. The flu disappeared, so obviously it's the flu. It's a mutation of the flu. And a very low rate of death, just as the flu was. The symptoms are mild in most cases, and they only last a few days. 99.9% of the cases, it's a mild flu. And then a few cases are severe. They get a severe form of it and still recover, and a very small percentage die from it. And this so-called vaccine to protect you from this, non-serious problem is having severe injury, the Pfizer. The CDC announced that it has a 3% disability rate, and they're defining disability as to the point where you need somebody to look after you. And I've seen some of the videos, and it's very, very sad, very dramatic. And it has a reasonably high death rate too. I didn't compare it to the death rate for the virus, but I'll bet you it's pretty close. And it's like, why anybody would want to do that? And when they're assessing as to whether an injury for the vaccine has occurred, they only go in 7 days. So if you drop dead on the 8th day, oh well, had nothing to do with the virus, nothing to do with the vaccine. It's like, why anybody would even consider having a vaccine that for the flu. Like, give me the flu, bring it on. I'm not even in the slightest afraid or concerned that something horrible is going to happen. Now, if somebody else wants to wear masks and stay home and stay away from people and have a vaccine, all that, I'm not trying to stop them. I'm not trying to make them, stop wearing a mask or I'm not throwing myself in front of them to try to make them not have a vaccine. I'll tell them what I know if they're interested, but I don't even force that on them. Just if it comes up and they're receptive, I tell them. If not, it's really not my place for a competent adult. The information is there for everyone to get, and if they want it, they can get it. And if they listen to me, I tell them. But otherwise, they're going to have to face the consequences of that decision. Anyways, I didn't mean this to be about vaccine, but it kind of ties in. And I just want to end with the Canadian Bill of Rights protects you from the federal government's mandate for vaccine if they try to make it mandatory. Bill of Rights, Section 1, gives you the right to expressed informed consent for any medical treatment. So that's for mask, because mask is a medical procedure. PCR test is a medical procedure. Vaccine is a medical procedure, and so is quarantine. So you have a right to refuse those in every and all situations. So if you're taking a plane, if you're at your job, if you're shopping, whatever, and screw the exemption. You don't have to have an exemption for the mask. You don't have to wear a mask. And if they work, the person who is afraid of the virus can wear one. So if they work, what's the problem? They're not going to get a virus if they've got a mask. If they've got a mask on. So really, we've got to start. Get rid of the mask. Open your store. Have come and go as you please, and let's take our normal back. And most importantly, we got this.